You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the September 27th, 2022 meeting of the LaPorte County Plan Commission. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
The September Plan Commission meeting has now come to order. All rise and, for the national anthem, or excuse me, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ashley, can I have a roll call?
Adam Kronka.
Present.
Jeff Wright.
Present.
John Carr.
Present.
Harold Parker.
Present.
Glenn Minnick.
Present.
Earl Cunningham.
Present.
Rita Beatty.
Present.
Rich Mrzinski.
Present.
Azad Shahal.
We have quorum.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to call for a motion for approval of the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Agenda's approved. I'd also like to call for an approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to petitions. Petition number 1, Petitioner William L. Siebert et al., Trustees, Trust dated 8/28/87, represented by Matt Garetano of Charles Hendrickson Associates, P.C.
No, this is adequate.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Garetano from Charles Hendrickson Associates Surveying and Engineering. Our offices are at 512 Lincoln Way here in LaPorte. Today I'm presenting to you, which I've handed out a packet to everybody. It's a 3-lot minor with a remainder of the dominant parcel. In the petition, it states that it's a 10.21 acre tract. If you look inside the packet, the parent parcel is a 10.21, but inside that parent is a deeded exception at 2.86. Might seem a little bit confusing when people start trying to add up the acreages. There is a 2.84 acre tract, the remainder of the dominant, that's going to remain on that parcel ID number. So we're looking at basically 3 lots. These lots will be serviced by basically private well and septic. It looks like we have on the graphical representation, you can see the size of the approximate houses and potential driveway locations. Obviously, trying to outlet the lot on lot 1 on the Schultz Road wouldn't be, I guess, efficient. Probably be best to outlet the lot 1 on 400, a little bit safer driveway. We've also illustrated some driveway turnarounds. Presently, this is just a tilled field, so once developed, properly seeded, we're looking at actually less runoff once the 3 lots are developed. As far as zoning goes, it's presently zoned R1B. The size of these lots that we have on here meet and exceed the minimum requirements for R1B. And that's what we're looking for, a favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission for these 3 lots. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
I'll ask a question. Sound check. Good. My question has to do with the plat committee, and I'm looking at the minutes, and it says Michael's speaking, and it says it's a small subdivision. There isn't any storm infrastructure on this. It's just infiltration on big lots.
Yeah.
Is the property sandy? The reason I'm asking is because a couple statements later, Amanda says they will be big systems because it's all clay.
Okay, so
Are we sand or are we clay? That's all
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's ever made the statement that it's sandy. I mean, they are they are able to take septics. As far as the health department's concerned, even with a runoff situation, we're looking at a 30% reduction in runoff from going from a tilled field to developed grass, parcels. So, the engineering is there. If we don't have the flooding situation now, you're going to have, or runoff, I should say, you're going to have less once the lots become developed and seeded.
I was more interested in the septic part of it. Are we looking at mound systems?
No, I think we're looking at subsurface system with perimeter drain, but there's plenty of relief on the site to accommodate the perimeter drains.
Okay.
And a little history about this piece of property that I probably should have mentioned in the beginning. This was originally approved for a 15-lot subdivision. The trust, though, didn't go through with it, and they lapsed on their 5 years and didn't finish the project, and in doing so have decided to go a different way. So they went with the larger lots with less quantity to be a little bit more congruent with the neighborhood versus 15 lots.
So Jay was at this meeting as well, County Engineer Sullivan. Did you guys talk about like sight lines on these driveways coming out on?
We did in the technical advisory meeting.
So you guys went through that?
Yeah, and
Okay.
all adequate, like we said. Obviously, nobody's going to intend for lot 1 to driveway off 400 right there at the corner.
Are the sight lines on 400
Yeah.
adequate as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't understand the history of this exactly, but I mean,
So
it's been split. There's 4 splits now, and then we're gonna address this split. I mean, on this total property, aren't there 3 parcels above this one that have already been split off of that parcel?
the trust had multiple parcel ID numbers for this area, and this is basically the south portion of the pre-existing parcel ID number.
Well, I mean, I don't see a big problem with it, but this isn't standard or allowed by the code to have that many splits off of a property.
Well, I think that's why they're here asking for a minor.
Eight.
That's why they're here asking for a minor. Because they cannot do it as a matter of right.
And I believe each parcel number gets 1 split. If you want to split more than that, it has to be a minor sub, which is why they're here tonight.
I mean, I mean, it's fine, but my point is that somehow we've allowed this parcel to be split 4 times, and now we're going to split it. One of those splits 4 more times, which is fine. But I'm just saying this shouldn't be a common occurrence. It looks like maybe it happened when the trust was formed. It was split without being subdivided.
That may be true, but under the rules, if they can do that, they can do that. If they had separate, doesn't matter about the owner. If they had separate parcel numbers, they could split those parcels, and they're not
Yeah, it could
considered
have been
as
split
additional
before the
split.
code was written.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
probably.
Any further questions from the board? Now, if you have a seat.
Thank you.
At this point, I'll call for any remonstrators either for or against the petition.
Lisa Pierzakowski, 3511 West Johnson Road. My brother-in-law's property backs up to this, and he brought it to me and asked some questions. I'm just going to ask, too, the same thing. There's 4 lots, and I know you try to explain this, but it's just not, I'm not understanding. The first lot is 7.35, the next one's 2.86, the next one's 2.91, and the last one's 2.9. This description and public notice was for 1 parcel. But it says 10.21. There's not 1 parcel that's 10.21. The 1 parcel that's listed on the public notice is only 7.35. So if you're going to use the 7.35 and the 2.86, which equals 10.21, wouldn't you have advertised for the two parcels? Because I only see one parcel was noticed. No? It's just confusing that, like you said, there's 4, and now you're going down to 2.5.
Well, you ask your question, and then the board will call Maddie up
Okay.
to explain. Okay.
So that's my question. Then my brother-in-law had some questions also.
Don Pierzakowski, 3934 North US 35. My question is what the covenants for the subdivision is going to be. The other thing, is this a first phase? Are they going to go and then continue on to go and put in more of a subdivision or not? That's what I'm trying to get across. Find out the information on that.
James Masekowitz, 3978 Schultz Road. I live right across the street from this land in question. 14 years ago, they approached this board with a subdivision I think was going to be 15 to 16 lots, and it was shut down by the health department. I've got a copy of it right here because of septic problems. I have some copies if you people would like to look them over.
Yes,
It
please.
was not approved like he said. It was shut down because I was at the meeting.
So I've got 2 copies, I'll send one on each end.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Welcome.
We don't have a picture of that.
No. Okay.
Mike, have you been out to look at this? Do you know anything about it?
I am familiar with the site, yes.
Give us your, what do you think?
Well, we had plat committee, and the health department is performing their role, and the required soil boring permits for this project will either meet their criteria or they won't. And the health department will approve or not approve based on those reports.
What's this letter? Is that,
That's an old letter from 2008, and it looks like it is setting parameters for there's an exception of lots 1 and 2 that would require perimeter drain outlets. I think that's pretty standard, and I think that Matt had mentioned that these will have perimeter drains. I think he said that, but we can confirm when he comes back up. But this has no bearing on the current health department administration review over this project. There will be new soil boring reports, and they will either be approved or they won't be.
I know that, James, you live in that area.
Right across the street.
I mean, I've driven through that area an awful lot, and James's lot to the south of him, the water just runs down that road. I mean, this area is known for these odd springs that pop out of the ground wherever they choose to pop out of the ground. So the only thing we need to be careful of is that we don't have the same situation we have now out that we're going to talk about later, is because any one of these lots could develop a spring and you can't stop it. I know there's one down the road that the driveway was put in, it was being excavated, they hit a spring, and it took them forever to stop it. It's just an oddball area. So whatever we do, we have to be careful that it's that kind of situation is not on us.
Right, and for our purposes, so what we're going to be interested in is surface water, stormwater management, which is covered in the lot size and the infiltration with the seeded and vegetated lots, which is covered. As far as the septics, none of us that are present here tonight are the septic experts. That's going to be the health department. And like I said, they will require those soil boring reports from a soil scientist, and they will make their approval or denial based on those reports.
Okay.
Now, it seems to me we've already done that, right? This is the health department you're speaking of. And 1 and 2, kind of misleading, is not the same as what was there 15 years ago. 1 and 2 is all the way back up. I hate to use the word by that junkyard, but that's 1 and 2 15 years ago. 1 and 2 now is right across the street from me. And like Glenn said, there's water running through there all the time.
Okay.
That's all I got to say. I'm not trying to stop this. Just want to make you aware of what the health department said
How it's got to be put
14, 15 years ago.
Appreciate
The
that.
no-go. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any other remonstrators, for or against? Matt, if you wouldn't mind.
So we can start, I can try to start again with the
Matt,
parcels. Yeah.
do you want to see this letter
I mean, it doesn't, I
or
can
not?
take a copy of it and put it in the folder. Soil report information was provided to the health department and technical advisory. So yeah, we're talking perimeter drains, it's a possibility, but there's plenty of relief on the lot to accommodate that. So it wasn't a situation where it was suggested warranting doing new borings, or it was a situation where lots were not going to be buildable. That was never brought up. Like I said, can go bring that letter back to the office, but back to the acreage portion, the 10.2 situation. With the multiple parcel ID numbers and the way that we're presenting this one now, the parent parcel itself is 10.21 in the deeded description, but there's also a deed exception to that, which already makes it smaller. Okay? And if you look on this first sheet here, this is the description. It starts with a larger piece and lesses out, which is common practice for trying to maintain the history or the change in the parcel. Instead of rewriting another proposed description, we're taking the original and we're lessing out that 2.86. From that, we are then doing this minor sub petition. A portion of that, which is 2.84, which you can see is at the very top, is not labeled a lot number. That's going to remain the dominant parcel remainder. And that's how the math adds up. The rest of it will fall in the deed of dedication for the right-of-way for the road. As far as the phases go, this is it. Originally, like I said, they went with 15 lots. That's done and gone with. If this minor goes through, that's it for the trust. There's nothing else to develop. Unless they sell one of the larger pieces that are outside the bounds of this petition to do something else. But I can't say whether or not a prospective buyer is going to do that or not. So, yeah, is that pretty much it, right? I mean, soil borings.
Is any of the property, not the 3 lots you've proposed tonight, is any of the other property currently for sale?
That I'm not sure. I'd have to pull up Beacon and see if the trust is still the present day owner. I can't say whether or not it's for sale or not. I would assume
Rita would know.
if we're preparing the petition for this 3 lot minor, the remainder, since the 15 lot has been, changed course,
Where's the water go? Maybe somebody wants
I would assume.
into that before they buy.
Again, it's the surface.
If we go back through the remaining questions, there's a question here on covenants, and I see from the petition, copies of proposed prospective covenants and restrictions will be furnished to County Planning Commission at the time of the public hearing.
Yeah, I have a set I can give to you guys right now if you'd like. Actually, you know what? I think we got it here. I don't have a full set for everyone, but
No, it's mostly for the second phase, is it not? Okay. So all in all, just mostly for the public, there's another phase of this where it comes back around to us, does it not? And that's where the covenants come into place.
Well, they can come in at any time, but this is primary approval. So as they progress, they'll have to come back for final approval before they start building.
Okay. Yeah. But just in general, from what we see here, it's all in order, and there's quite a bit of work behind it. So
I'm not sure, Matt, if you can kind of clarify the acreage. I can see Lisa's face back there, and she's been adding like crazy on her calculator.
I don't know. I could, if
so
it's okay to bring her up here, I could walk her through with the plat.
So I can
that's
see
okay.
she's still frustrated over that. If you can just maybe just give her a little heads up on it a little bit.
We're just trying to figure it out because it definitely shows 4, but he keeps saying 3, so I just like.
So.
Oops, sorry, that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You come up here too if you'd like.
Say 1, 2, 3, 4.
So here is the dominant, and it's truncated to try to get it to fit on the print. But inside that dominant, there's a deed exception. So this is gone right off the top. That's that other piece. So we have the deed less this. That's outside.
Okay.
This is the bounds. That's that 7.3. This is a portion that's going to remain the dominant parcel. It's going to retain that parcel ID number, and this is all we're asking for.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that help?
I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
I see now.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or?
I'll read from the 2008 letter here. It says the almost last paragraph says, if perimeter drain outlets cannot be established, and goes on. And the department head plat committee meeting says that each of these systems are going to have perimeter drains. And there's plenty of relief to put the perimeter drains in. And I think that's what this letter requires. It says, if you're going to put septics out there, you have to put perimeter drains. I don't read this letter as stopping the subdivision somehow. It just says, if you're going to put in septic systems, you got to put in perimeter drains.
Right.
And the plat committee says you have to put in perimeter drains.
I would concur with that.
Do that with less than 15 lots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
My only question would be to Doug is what is our due diligence? What do we do knowing that there are some water issues with springs? I mean, can we put something in our, I mean, I think the subdivision's fine, but I mean,
No, you can at the end. Okay, there's still a ton of work to be done in between. So, and this is, the plat committee's not done, it's gonna continue to work on this, so. As far as there's a misnomer here, and we're gonna talk about this more in a minute. There's no liability responsibility on the county at all. That's a contractual relationship between the seller and the buyer and the builder, okay? But either way, there's gonna be a ton of looking at this in between. If you wanna make a condition on primary approval, you can certainly do that. I don't know what kind of condition you're thinking, but you can make a condition on moving forward.
I don't know what the condition would be. I just, like I said.
Well, subterranean water's problematic. I don't know how you manage that from a legislative standpoint.
I mean, how about if the condition is that each lot has that written in its description that there is subterranean water in that area and the buyer should be aware?
Well, okay, but here, we worked together for a long time. You've seen it, but otherwise, where's the proof? Before the county's going to impose a condition, we can't just say we know it's been that way, okay?
I mean, I've driven down those roads and the water in the spring runs down the roads. And it just comes, it seeps out of the ground.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying, how do you establish where, I'm not arguing either way, but I've got to write this. So how do we establish where a subterranean water issue will be, or how do you monitor or identify them? Because I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know how we do that, other than you can counter it when you build. I mean, is there a way to tackle that?
The only documentation up until this point that I would think would be your seasonal high water table indicators within the soil report, which 3 borings have been done on each of the 15 lots, and that may have been the reason, the stem for the perimeter drain, I guess, suggestion in this letter. Your seasonal high water table indicators in the soil report, other than pointing back to that soil report for each lot in between, like you stated, between buyer, seller, and builder, that's about it.
Is it possible at this point to say and require that each structure on each lot shall demonstrate proper subterranean, subsurface hydrogeologic remediation of water, so we don't end up in another subdivision?
Well, you're the engineer, but from my understanding, that's what the soil report gives. That's the information the soil report gives us, which is required and reviewed by the plat committee. Is there another mechanism?
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
We're looking at soil borings for septics, and I think the issue that we're trying to get at, or some of the members are trying to get at, is we want protection on the structures themselves, not necessarily the septic fields.
Let me jump in here if I
Or
may.
basement, if there's basements or whatever that go in.
Okay, so what do we require? If you approve this?
Proven
Through what?
subsurface hydrogeologic remedy to protect the structure.
So what that would take, okay, what he's talking about. When you do a soil boring report for a septic, you go down 5 feet, which is typically what the handheld machinery would let you do. But if you're going to put in a 9-foot basement, and all you have is a soil boring report for septic, that's not going to cover a 9-foot basement. You're missing 4 feet of depth.
Okay, let me ask you this. Are perimeter drains always required?
No.
All right, you're the engineer. What if we required perimeter drains on all basement construction?
I don't want to sit here and try to design a basement, but that would be a great step forward.
Okay, and I'm not arguing the point. I've got to draft it, so we've got to be able to specifically identify what it is we want, and we say, okay, perimeter drains are going to be required in the design phase.
Yes.
And
a sump pump.
Okay. Yeah.
So my problem with this is we start labeling these particular lots. We're saying, okay, now your lots are going to require this without this other test that you're mandating that, that we're not going to go 9 feet to see what's going on. The next guy goes and builds and says, well, how come you made me do this? You didn't make him, and he's putting one there. How can we forecast the fact that, okay, I'm going to make you do it, Doug. Mike, you don't have to, even though you're 2 miles down the road, because neither of us did that test. Now, going back just a couple steps back, we require the perimeter drains, which I think is, should be done regardless, but we require perimeter drains on these. Something happens, the perimeter drain doesn't function, who are they going to go? Because now the county said you had to do this, but now it still didn't work. Are we open up that can?
That's what they're missing the boat on this whole thing, and the county council, from what I've learned. There's no liability for the council, okay, or for the planning commission.
So
okay?
I'd rather just leave it nothing.
Well, I'm just saying, you can establish rules for the subdivision, but not for individual lots, okay? But there's the responsibility for the building commissioner is to inspect pursuant to the building code. That's it. It's a ministerial act, okay? The code says this, we inspect it, it's good, okay? Trust me, I've handled enough construction cases over the years. Anything other than that is up to the contractor, and if there's an engineer involved, and the homeowner.
There are other subdivisions where we've had soil borings and they only go down to 5 feet, and now they're, I can think of one where we're spending, $1 million to go back and remedy. That falls back on the county.
Well, it doesn't have to, although I commend the decision, but that was a discretionary decision on the county. It was not a mandatory act. Okay, I think the right thing to do is to fix it, and we may still have this issue with some older subdivisions, but it wasn't a liability, it wasn't required. I think the elected officials chose to do the right thing, but that was a choice. Big difference.
And if I may add to that and jump in, because I was the one who lobbied the council for that as part of my former position. To piggyback on what the attorney said, the county was not under any liability or obligation to step in and fix that problem. And there are many isolated problems throughout the county where people have built many, many years ago, or they are the lowest elevation around, and that's where the water goes, and that's on them. The situation in Meadowview is when you have 27 plus homes on the same road or vicinity that are experiencing the subterranean water, and you have that many right in that concentrated area, and their only remedy is to pump onto our county roads and infrastructure. You're now entering a situation in which they can't put their own lift station in. They can't mitigate this problem on their own. It takes government to step in and solve this problem, even though they were not obligated to or under no liability to. How else do you solve that problem? And so that's what's happened with the Meadowview situation.
I think we can do better than soil borings to make the buyers. There's not going to be engineers probably on these residential things looking at these kind of things to put stuff in to do the remedy. Probably not.
Well, but if I may, that's a discussion for Meadowview, not this petition. I don't want to get caught up in larger county issues when we have one request for one minor subdivision.
Those comments were for that.
Yeah.
This one.
Like he said, you can impose conditions on any approval. To briefly discuss what Rita said, some of these are on a case-by-case basis. And I happen to agree that if there is a known problem, okay, there's no way that every problem can be foreseen and known before it happens. But in a situation where there's a known problem, there should be some form of disclosure or something to address that.
Can something be, so we're like in the early start of this process, they're coming back again. Can something be thought through rather than try to solve it like tonight and add that condition later? That can be added later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But if you're going to impose a condition, or you can also impose a condition that they explore this and come up with the remedy during the next phase. Okay, because remember, we're just in primary plat right now. Okay, so you can instruct the committee to examine and come up with the remedy for the commission's concerns for subterranean water.
That would make a nice motion.
On that note, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take any motions you have.
I'll make a motion that the petition for the primary plat of this subdivision be granted with the stipulation that the subterranean water is addressed during the next phase of the exploration of this plat.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. On to old business, which is this last petition was a great segue. Mr. Building Commissioner.
Are we moving to Meadowview discussion?
Moving to Meadowview discussion.
Okay, so since our last meeting, I've drafted a couple of documents. I run things that are legal issues. I obviously run past our attorney, and as he has stated, since we do not have liability, rather than a hold harmless agreement, a disclosure would be a better route to go. So now I'm going to change what I have submitted to him based on our discussions, and I can let our attorney elaborate on that.
Well, the zoning code refers to a disclosure. I'm not sure the disclosure is very well worded, but keep in mind that from a governance standpoint, the Plan Commission can only go so far. You cannot tell somebody they can't sell a lot. Okay, that's a taking. That's an unconstitutional taking. But you can certainly warn people. And so there are two things we could do here. We could warn them, or you could, down the low, I know we don't have enough information to do it tonight, but you could require deeper soil borings, but then you have to have an expert analyze those deeper soil borings, and I'm not sure that's going to take care of the subterranean problem. But you can't do it per lot. You're going to have to do that across the board. Everybody's going to have to be treated the same. So disclosure or more strict requirements. Those are your two choices. But those more strict requirements have to be equally applied across the board to not to subdivisions, but to new residential construction. Or commercial, if you want to go commercial too. That we'd have to figure that out. That would require a committee and some work with some experts and drafting to come up with something, proposal for the Plan Commission to review. Because I want to reiterate, Mike's right, and when I was county attorney, we handled some areas. There was actually supplemental land contouring construction where the county stepped in and fixed the road because we had flooding, because somebody did something after initial construction. I don't think we're ever going to get away from that. But this is a contractual relationship between the seller, the builder, if there's an engineer involved, and the buyer. So I think the Plan Commission needs to decide, are we going to create new regulations or are we going to warn? If we're going to warn, then Mike and I can come up with something to present to the Plan Commission at the next meeting. If we're going to come up with more strict regulations, I recommend that go to a committee because that's going to take some hashing out.
As my personal thoughts, you start looking at stronger regulations, you look at more cost for the test to be collected, more cost for the test to be analyzed, and it goes everywhere for new construction going from La Crosse to Hudson Township. And we're just starting to drive building costs up all the way around. disclosure and personally seems more appropriate, but are we talking something that is more appropriately drafted up between the building commissioner and yourself, or are we talking more that something we need to explore as a subcommittee coming out of the plan commission?
I don't think a disclosure document really needs a committee. You know, they always say, what's a camel? It's the result of a committee.
Yeah.
I think we could, if the plan commission wants to go by way of disclosure, I think Mike and I can work something up, and then we can tweak it from there if the plan commission wants to make changes.
We can bring it back to you. Whatever him and I come up with, bring it back, present it for discussion.
Anybody have any different thoughts?
No, I agree. I'd rather see a disclosure.
All right. Mike, what further direction you need from us?
I will draft something. I'll run it by Doug. Between the two of us, we will change what started out as a hold harmless to a disclosure document, and we will bring it back to this commission.
And as I foresee it, we'll do it kind of like we do for the farmers. On residential new construction, it's a warning, really, but we do the same thing on all new residential construction in ag zones. And it's a disclosure document that we give them. And I think we'll probably work similarly to how we handle the agricultural community.
Okay. Sounds like a fair plan to me. All right. Moving on. Acclamation. Let's call for motion and vote. So.
Motion to approve the plan, the building commissioner and the plan commission attorney come up with a solution for us to examine.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. All right. Old business item number 2, discussion on limiting solar panels. Doug, if you wouldn't mind.
All right, folks. I'm going to explain. Some people, I think there's confusion on how the different commissions work. Okay. The Plan Commission approves subdivisions, vacates roads, and passes ordinance with regard to zoning. That's all they do here. If you don't like the decision the Board of Zoning Appeals made, they don't have authority to do anything here. Okay. But the way an ordinance is passed is there's a request, and I read the request. It looks like there's a request more or less for solar panel coverage because we just entered a solar ordinance. If you're not aware of that, get online, read it, because we spent a lot of time on that solar ordinance. Okay, and so you can put in solar as a matter of right so long as it complies with the ordinance. So we have, it looks to me like we have a request for coverage on lots or on farmland. Okay, that's a little bit different issue than what they passed, and I don't think the Plans Commission's taken a look at that. So we have a request to take a look at that, and we also have a request on the battery issue. Okay, now the way you can make a written request, but we don't take public comment in Plan Commission. What happens is you make the request, they decide if they want to set an exploratory committee and what they may want in it. Then they ask me to draft it. I then give it to them, and it's distributed to the public. Then they decide if they're going to move forward. If they move forward, they have a public hearing. That's when everybody talks on pro or against. Okay, and the reason I say that it's a legislative process, so we have to follow the pattern. My job is to make sure we pass it properly. So whatever is passed, and that's up to them, not me. But whatever's passed, I got to make sure I can defend it later on when it's challenged. Okay, so I'm not trying to prevent anybody from talking. My point is now is not the time. All right, and we have to follow this because if an ordinance is later on challenged, they're going to look at how it was passed and if the rules were followed and the proper steps were followed. So my job is to make sure we're following the proper steps. If you don't like the BZA's decision, your recourse is circuit court. Okay, you got 30 days to file an appeal with circuit court. There's a whole bunch of law that tells you how to do it. Hire a lawyer to do it, trust me. But That's not going to happen here. We're forward looking in Plan Commission. What rules, if any, are they going to pass looking to the future and future requests? All right. Because if there's an ordinance, so it probably won't go in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals, depending on what they come up with. Does that make sense to everybody? So I think the issue to the Plan Commission tonight is, do you wish to form a committee, and if so, who's going to be on it, for entertaining solar coverage, and then a second committee looking at any battery storage facility connected with the power grid. I would put it that way, because it's not just lithium ion.
Yep.
Okay. And that's my best explanation as to what we're doing tonight.
All right. Any discussion from the board? Thoughts, opinions, motions?
Good evening. As a member of the Plan Commission, if you would like, I would like to be on that committee. I've worked very closely with Stark County and Pulaski County and the solar panels going there, and the individuals down there in the courts that's running through right now, right? Pulaski County is an appeals court over solar panels. So I would be willing to serve on that committee if you'd like to, because it's been a whole bunch of fun in Stark and Pulaski County.
I bet you it is.
I'd serve with
Sir,
Tony.
if you would, could you reintroduce yourself to us?
Oh, sorry. Tony Hendricks, LaPorte County Surveyor, for the media and for the. I'm on the Plan Commission, but since my firm was developing, I could not take part in that discussion.
Appreciate it, Tony. Thank you.
So if Tony's going to chair it, I'd be on him with it.
I will have Harold on.
Is there a motion?
For committee? Have a motion, yeah.
Harold wanna give me a microphone. I will make a motion if Tony would like to chair up the solar panel committee. That sounds wonderful, and Harold wants to volunteer to be on it, and anybody else that wants to.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we're specific, because we just passed an solar ordinance. This is on solar coverage only, or are we looking at modifying the existing ordinance?
It's simply, I think the whole point here is, and I think what everybody needs to, I mean, what they're looking at is, I mean, this is such a political and social and economic issue, is property rights of the landowner versus the scope of how many solar fields can we put up in a county. And that's what the scope is. That's what they want to talk about.
I would say modified, but Mr. Chairman, what would you?
No, you can't.
I would say you need to modify and look at the coverage. So it would be some sort of editing, modifying of the coverage. So whoever wants to be on the committee, we have 9 members. We can only have 4. If Commissioner Brzezinski would like to be on, it'd be nice, because that puts us, no.
I'll be on it.
So there's only 4 of us. Yes, Mr. Carr would be good from his standpoint. So we could look at the editing and modifying in the coverage area about land use. It's a land use, right? It's not, we can't delve into the economy of it. It's a question of land use. And we can only have 4 members since we have 9, and 4 is not a quorum, so we could have up to 4 members. So it'd be nice to.
So I make a motion to modify solar panel ordinance that we have with Tony chairing it, Mr. Parker involved, John Carr, and then 1 more.
I'll take the open seat.
Adam,
I'll take it.
and including Adam.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you have a second?
I need a second. 2.
Okay.
Need a second. All right. Now I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Now to the other issue. When it comes to batteries, we don't currently have an ordinance.
Maybe I'll fill you in what we had. BZA had 2 requests, both of which went through, but they weren't done willy-nilly. Okay, we don't have. Excuse me. We have nothing in the code. So, as the BZA attorney, I made the judgment call to call it a special exception. A special exception is the closest look you can look at any application for a variance. Okay, and the conditions are pretty unlimited. So what occurred in front of the BZA for 2 different facilities, I and the couple of members of the BZA and public worked on exceptions to a grant. So there are 10 exceptions that we set out. And if anybody wants to know what they are, I got them with me. We could talk after the meeting. But those 10 exceptions made the BZA comfortable. At the same time, Representative Jim Pressel got up and spoke, and I've talked with him since. The legislature is looking at drafting something also. So I'm not saying we don't need a committee. I just want to bring you up to speed on what's occurred to date. Right now we have nothing, but there is a set of federal regulations. So what we did was nobody in the county is equipped to inspect this stuff. So one of those exceptions was the petitioner is paying for each one separately an amount up to $35,000 where we're going to hire our own engineer to look at these. And the petitioner is also going to pay $1,000 a year to have it inspected. $10,000 a year? Excuse me, $10,000 a year to have it inspected. So we're going to pay somebody that knows what they're doing to look at this. Okay? So that just kind of gives you an idea on the framework on what's been granted. There's a whole bunch of other requirements we have in there. Okay? And that's how we handled it in case anybody's curious.
One other thing that's pretty important is the fact that we had them push off the ability to pull building permits until after the state legislature meets and looks at their own coverage, because right now there isn't a whole lot from the state law, state legislature.
Yeah,
coverage.
Mr. Pressel's telling me this is on the legislature's agenda of whatever committee it is to look at. Okay, and so if we form a committee to look at an ordinance, because I think we need something, unless the state passes something. But what do we do as a stopgap until that's done? So I think it's a good idea to form a committee to take a look to see if the county wants to try to draft an ordinance. And I say that, I emphasize that because this is very, very complicated, and there's a lot of variations of the type of batteries. Or proceed if there are any more variance requests like we did with the last ones, because I'm pretty comfortable with what we did. Agree or disagree with the decision, I think we were good protecting the county and the citizens with it.
I would agree with our council's statement, and I would add as a public statement that just because those 2 facilities passed step 1, that was step 1, that was preliminary. That does not mean that they will ever come to fruition. It does not mean that they will ever be developed or that they will ever make it past the finish line. They made it past step 1. There's a long process to go. If they would be to make it all the way to the end, they could potentially apply for building permits in 2024 to break ground. But as I stated, there's a lot to go through between now and then, and it may or may not be allowed to proceed.
So are we comfortable handling it like you did until we hear from the state then? I mean, do you think we're covered there then during that?
I think we need to look. We've never had anything like this before. So as the BZA attorney, I tried to make sure we're covered wherever we can. But this is so new and we had so little information to work with. I'm okay with what we did, but I think we should. I would like somebody to take a look at it to make sure until the legislature comes up with it, that the Plan Commission's okay. Makes an affirmative decision as to whether we handle it in the BZA with exceptions or we draft an ordinance. I think this group needs to decide how we're going to handle it until, if and when the legislature comes up with something, because my experience has been the legislature does not come up with legislation very quickly. So if they start their committee next year, I'm pessimistic we're going to have legislation the following year. That's based on my experience. I don't want us hanging out there 5 years without a committee at least taking a look at it, making a firm decision. This is what we're going to do moving forward, or at least for a certain period of time.
Do we know if Howard County or St. Joe County has any kind of ordinance?
I got nothing. No, they don't.
They don't?
I didn't find anything anywhere.
Yeah, I didn't find anything either. This is a extremely tough one. This is.
Well, I think the reason no counties drafted one is because it's so technical, and there's so many things you could miss at the county level, and drafting an ordinance is going to require expert input, which we're going to have to get funding for if we're going to do it. There's no way I have the ability or knowledge to draft a competent ordinance because there's so many technical issues involved in this. And I think the states, the counties in the state are kind of pushing it off because you've also got IRC, the state legislature. What's the grid acronym? I can't remember the people that run the grid.
MISO?
Huh?
You're talking MISO?
MISO. So you got multiple entities here involved, and there's already a set of federal regulations that monitor all this. So, you know, let's assume for the purpose of discussion, we come up with something, we come up with an ordinance. I think we need to see how viable a local county ordinance is. That at a minimum needs to be examined. Because anything we come up with, they have to inspect. And if they don't have the technical expertise to inspect it, then we have to figure out some infrastructure to perform the inspections. Same thing on the 10-foot soil board. And who's going to look at them to determine they're okay? Because we don't have the people to do it. But that's because this is all new, okay? But I do think the Plan Commission needs to take a look at it and come up with some decisions and conclusions as to what we're going to do if and until the legislature passes something. And that's one reason why one of the conditions was they can't even apply, well, the two facilities that are approved can't even apply for a building permit until 2024. Because in the meantime, we may get something from the state.
Yeah, I guess my suggestion would be not a committee just yet. Give it one more month because some states are dealing with this. I believe Wyoming and Nevada and some California. So they are already running through some of this stuff. They have some of these facilities running. But we're crossing a lot of states. You know, their laws are a lot different from Indiana's laws. So, you know, just like we did with the subsurface drainage, pull up anything you can find on the internet and let's start getting our heads around it. And I don't think how one more month's going to hurt us to bring it back up and decide which direction we want to go. Because this is so new.
Yeah, and we don't know, but I would be surprised if we get any more petitions in the near future. I mean, we've got the two that went through, but I mean, these are some pretty major projects. So I think we're okay if we want to wait, you know, for a month or two.
Yeah, even the state legislature's stumped here. Everyone is.
So we worked with. There were several people that, you know, put their heads to the grindstone and you know, started looking stuff up. So we had some guidance with the NFPA 855, the National Fire Code. We found SOPs from University of Massachusetts, handling storage, you know, stuff like that. That SOP is standard operating procedure. We had the state legislature in, they're taking it up. So, you know, we worked with what we had, but as far as our attorney stated, we don't have state ordinances or local ordinances as of yet. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't due diligence put in to it and processing that preliminary step, including meeting with all the first responders, fire chiefs, EMS, hazmat, and again, the National Fire Safety Code and SOPs from other agencies that had experience dealing with it. You know, but we did that in the absence of a local ordinance.
Matt, and I just want to add, keep in mind, if you pass an ordinance, whatever it might be, okay, if you modify the book, the zoning, the current zoning code, and say, okay, it's a special exception. I'm just using an example. Every time it goes in front of the BZA, every facility has to go in front of the BZA. My worry as the board attorney for both boards, if you pass an ordinance and it complies with the ordinance, they don't have to get permission. They can put it in as a matter of right. That concerns me because it's so new. What if we miss something? They could just put them in. But I think at some point we need an affirmative decision from this plan commission. We want to decide, okay, we're going to do it this way, or yes, we're going to affirmatively wait until this time. In the meantime, deal with it like you have been, whatever that decision is. I think that eventually something needs to come from the plan commission, but it doesn't have to be immediate.
So Tony stated maybe we wait a month. So we formed a committee on the solar. How about the next time this commission convenes, we put lithium discussion on the agenda, see where we're at, see if a committee needs to be formed, go from there.
Motion to support.
That's how you gotta put it in.
Yeah,
Well,
motion
it's
to
not
table.
technically on the agenda yet, so we don't have to table. We'll just put it on for the next agenda.
All right.
But this leaves it up to the public if anyone has anything. You can forward to Mike or me or
Yeah, but I want
members.
to make sure we're clear. If there's something that comes from the public, it needs to come in on the record. We can't just send stuff around, okay?
Yes.
So if there's something that can contribute to drafting the ordinance, we're welcome. Please send it. Well, wait. But if you want it in evidence when an ordinance is passed or not, you got to redo it. You see what I mean? I've got to have a record. Okay? Okay, what's your question, man?
Microphone.
Yeah, we're gonna try.
The farmer's going to be in 6 generations with our grandkids. Rumors are they want to build a solar across from us. How can we stop it?
That's they can't comment on that. Okay.
I'm just saying. And then where they want to build this battery thing? Have any of you guys been out there and saw the land?
Ma'am,
It floods.
you're not hearing me. Okay.
I know, but it just-
the BZA made a
Where's all the
decision. The BZA made a decision. If you don't like it, get a lawyer and appeal it.
Okay, but I-
They can't do anything about it at all.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Doug. On that note, I'll
Motion
take a
to
motion. Do we have any new business?
None.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
With